How
Totally.
important is it that people focus on self-improvement and growth?
I mean, I think it's the number one thing. Honestly, I think we just finished talking about this. We did this edutainment kind of comedy sketch, kind of in playhouse in Beverly Hills the other day, and we were talking about this very thing. So one of the things that, and to answer this is kind of twofold, and to preface it a little bit, when we talk about relationships, we want to have people experience a higher love. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, there was a point where we couldn't go to the moon or couldn't fly. And people were like, you know what, that's impossible, until it was possible, right? There's a point where we were like, hey, look, we're going to be able to do podcasts and all this business around the world. And this little device is going to fit in our pocket. What are you talking about? That's impossible, until it's possible. Everything, right? In any industry, when it comes to relationships, there are stories and limiting beliefs that people are telling. And it just comes out like natural. Oh, old ball and chain. Oh yeah, when you get married, oh, you better do that and travel, because when you have kids, you can't. There's all these things that are in the ether. And oh, you can't do that. That's impossible. Well, until it's possible. So the higher love we're trying to achieve is where what is impossible right now in relationships, and how can we make that possible, right? So when I think about that higher love, I think about one of the main themes of Relationship Renegades, and it's creating a space where both parties feel safe, seen, heard, and loved. And when both parties are committed, to answer your question now, to growth, both parties, then that's fertile soil, Daniel, for the plant, for the relationship to grow exponential, right? Because if we're in the day-to-day life and there's kids running around and there's business, and we lost a family member, or there's a lot of chaos going on, which happens, life happens. If we're both committed to growth, and let's say one of it gets triggered, I know, because I'm committed to growth, that because I'm getting triggered, I know that that's my stuff. I'm not sure if I can cuss here, but that's my stuff. And yeah, that's my shit, right? And if Rachel gets triggered, she knows that that's her stuff that she's got going on. So she knows that she needs to look the woman in the mirror, and I know that I need to look the man in the mirror, because something's resonating with me that hasn't been healed yet. But the key is that, one, we're committed to growth, so we know when that happens, we're in a safe space to look at that and to communicate with each other on how we can remove something that's within us that is still triggering us. And so the key there is to create that safe space to allow for that to happen. So when you say, how important is committed to growth, I think, well, that commitment is step number one, and a lot can flourish from that space because of that.
And so I'm curious, Emilio, I mean, where'd you learn all this stuff, man? I mean, why, what makes you the expert, or what experience did you have in your life that maybe you learned from somebody, maybe you had a mentor? Where did this come from, man? I mean, because obviously, I get that what you're talking about, but where did this come from?
Yeah, so I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and my upbringing, we grew up very USA poor. I was in a gang growing up. I was very much in a domestic violence type household. Dad was very abusive to my mom, physically, mentally, emotionally. There was a few times physically, but mainly mentally and emotionally, which I think kind of hits harder and kind of scars deeper. And so I was just in a constant fight or flight my entire life. Always finding my mom or sister somewhere inside or outside the house crying because of something that my dad did, and would go and calm them down. Didn't know what I was doing. Sometimes I would say something, sometimes I wouldn't. But basically, I grew up in a household where there wasn't healthy relationships. Now, there's so many different tangents that I won't get into, because my dad, people are a product of their environment, and it's not to give my dad excuses, but people just don't know what they don't know. It's just all unobtained consciousness. And so without going in all these different rabbit holes, I just didn't see a lot of healthy relationships. And I remember in second grade, literally, I was in the bathroom, and just because I didn't want to be outside with the screaming and yelling and everything. And I remember making a promise to myself, this is not, I don't know how I had this consciousness, but I was like, this is not the way that it should be. I am not going to create this for my life. And I remember making a promise in second grade to myself, for that. Um, and there's a whole long story, but I remember in sixth grade, one of my grandmothers, lived right next to Barnes and Noble, and I would ride my bike all over the neighborhood, and I found myself in a Barnes and Noble at that time. You know, hadn't been in there, but I kind of was walking in different stores, walked in there, and somehow found myself into the self-help section. And I started like just, books would start to call me and I would start to read them. And I would just kind of sit there all day and like just open up books and like scan them and read them. So I found self-development indirectly early on. And that just kind of catapulted me and laid a great foundation, not only to like learn more about myself and other people and how to create friends and influence people and all these types of things very early on. And then it was just a failing forward the 10,000 times. I got into toxic relationships a ton of times. I became my father a ton of times. I hit rock bottom through all that journey and lost everything in my life. Worse than I thought I was going to marry, just the whole gamut of things, to where I finally got into a place of like nothingness, lost my entire ego, lost literally everything, and had to rebuild and finally look the man in the mirror more than ever. I'd been doing it for so long because I didn't want to become him. But it was like, okay, I have something deeper. I have to go even deeper. I have to look the man even more so. And when I did, everything changed. So, on a high level, it was all that hero's journey to allow me to continue to remove the things that don't serve me anymore, continue to really remove and unbecome everything that I'd become to find out who I really was. And I think at that place, that resonance, that energy that I was giving off really attracted the woman I have today. My wife, being able to attract someone like that and also not self-sabotage and continue that healthy relationship. And of course, I will, we're always learning, we're always growing. So I'm a student for life. And so always emptying the cup, if you will, right? As much as I've learned in this space, it's like, well, how can I continue to empty and see something maybe I haven't seen before? So that's a little bit.
And so I'm curious, when you were in Barnes and Noble,
Yeah.
what were one of those first books that maybe lit the fire for you, or maybe something that really resonated with you early on?
Yeah. I mean, funny enough, I remember in second grade, first one was how to win friends and influence people. Funny enough, I was really attracted to leadership. So first, early on, there were actually a lot of leadership books from Gladwell. And so those, funny enough, it wasn't like, oh, I want to get relationships, let me find a relationship book. Something called me to leadership. And I started reading a lot of leadership books, most of all of Gladwell's books. And then I think the second book I read was how to, the Carnegie book, my gosh, the
Well, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I mean,
that was one of them. Yeah. The second one was oh my God, I'm drawing a blank right now. The rich one. It was like how to get rich in, it'll come to me. Okay. But it was a lot of those books that first came to me. And then I think right after that is when I started diving more into leadership books from like Alison Armstrong, understanding women, understanding men, and just kind of, going on that path.
Thank you for watching our short clips on Alonzo Academy. If you'd like to watch the next short clip, click here. If you'd like to watch the entire podcast, click here.